Hey Krisztina, how are you?
Hi, Hilit. Nice to see you.
Good, thank you. So thank you, Louis. My name is Hilit, and I'm VP Growth at YouAppi. And Krisztina, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Krisztina. I'm one of the growth leads at Ames, and I'm focusing primarily on retargeting activities. Ames is one of the leading mobile game developers in the casino genre. And I've been in the industry for over 11 years now, based in London. And before moving to London, I to live in Malta, in real money gaming as well. And I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So Krisztina, just to jump right in, 2020 was actually, although the pandemic and COVID, I would say that the social casino games had an amazing growth year during 2020. We're seeing the same trends going into 21. Would love to hear a little bit about how you're seeing the growth goals for the company, and just to hear a little bit about your growth team's activities moving into 21 for the rest of the year.
Yeah, for sure. I think I couldn't agree more. Like, it was a great year for social casinos, of course, for us at Pro-MNS as well, which everyone is very happy about, considering what a hard year it was otherwise. In 2021, our main focus is, of course, still expansion. We would like to try and keep growing, keep this momentum. We are testing a couple of new markets. We're trying to expand in Europe as well, but of course, retaining our core user base and our markets. That's still in the front line of our objectives. And maybe something new that I can share where we're planning to do is to also try a couple of new channels, one of them being TV. So we are already testing the TV activities in Europe in a couple of geos, but it's still kind of baby steps. We are still in the learning phase since it's a very new channel for us, and we're also planning some web activities going forward.
Wow, amazing! That sounds super interesting. Maybe so a little bit about that if we're on the different channels. In terms of different segmentation, audiences, A/B testing that you have been doing in 2020, is from your perspective, have you tried and drilled down into the same segmentation during 2020, or due to the scale and the growth, have you seen or tested some new audiences? What is your approach on that?
So when testing audiences, it can be quite tricky, to be honest, especially for retargeting, obviously, since you really want to be sure that you can analyze and measure the profitability and the value of these retargeting activities. And since the size of the audiences have such a huge impact on your success in retargeting, it's quite tricky. Having said that, we do test different approaches and different audiences. One of the latest changes that we were doing is to kind of change the way we were approaching our payer strategies and split the users into LTV segments. But what we found is that the more you want to narrow your segmentation and be really specific, since you know your users, the harder it gets, of course, to target them. And in some cases, it's kind of impossible to hit those targets for certain segments or to even find the users. So we do still have this new strategy currently running, and we're still looking into it, how to improve. But we needed to really take this into consideration and kind of merge some of the groups together because the sizes are just too small. And other type of testing that we're doing or been doing in 2020 as well, it was focusing on incentives, not necessarily only for the high segments, but also for the lower value segments, different coin offers we can give to different users to try and bring them back to the game. And of course, creative, because we all know, I think, in the industry that creative is super important. So that's something that we try and have kind of constantly on in the background.
I understand. Speaking, you mentioned a little bit about the, I would say, the evaluation and the effectivity of all the different A/B testing, which are so wide, and you still want to focus and go and focus on what is working and what is not. We'll jump just in a little bit about incrementality and measurements, but maybe just a minute before, if you can share a bit, how are you diversifying between the user acquisition efforts, and when is it the right time to actually add all these retargeting strategies? And if I also may ask, if I can add, how are you actually adding the tests? How are you deciding where to put every dollar when you need to compare the budgets that are going to user acquisition and versus retargeting?
So I'm not sure if I have like the perfect solution here or answer when to start adding in retargeting, but I think it's really about testing, and it's also different for different games, right? So what we've been doing historically in the past is we were very, very conservative and focusing on mainly reactivation rather than re-engaging our users when it comes to paid activities. Because we really wanted to make sure we're not cannibalizing any users. The main focus was retargeting churned users, churned payers, essentially. From that, we moved away. We moved away from that a little bit, and less conservatively now we are also testing targeting after a shorter inactivity period, but we are still not really we're still not targeting users straight after installing or active users. But it's something that has been on my mind for a really long time. And of course, we are having internal discussions about it, because this could fall into my upsell and activation strategies. But essentially, what you really need to make sure is that you can measure it and that you're not cannibalizing. So ultimately, my aim or the company's aim would be to find the pockets of users, regardless of the life cycle stage, that we think that they can have a positive incremental uplift during the different stages of their life cycle, and target those users with our paid strategies. So this is, of course, it's not something that can be done from one day to the other, and it's quite a complex task. But thankfully, we have an amazing data science team who is helping with this project already. So it's something that's work in progress. And I'm hoping that maybe I can share some good results about this next time when we speak.
Perfect. I'm certainly looking forward. When I truly think that incrementality is one of the most important features to utilize in a retargeting campaign. I think that it is super important to make sure that you're not only looking on how the attributed results are actually happening, but how does that compare to the organic. And saying that, it would be very interesting if you can share a little bit from your perspective. Are you utilizing internal BIs for incrementality? Are you utilizing external? Are you using the vendors to do that? What type of goals or benchmarks are you using for incrementality? I think you started to mention the ROI. Would be great to hear about the different metrics and how does that work for you?
Yeah, for sure. And again, I couldn't agree more. Incrementality is probably it was my favorite word in 2020 for sure, because we were focusing on it so much. It's super important, I think, overall in marketing, but especially when it comes to retargeting, because essentially you want to bring that incremental uplift, whether that's in ROI or in engagement or the number of sessions or the length of the session. That's a different question, but you want that to be a positive uplift. The way we do it, of course, there's many great partners out there who have different features and products that you can use. You can also use uplift studies on some of the social channels. But we are quite, how to say that, we really trust our internal analysis most of the time, and we consider those as the source of truth. So what we're doing is everything is internal. All our incrementality analysis is done internally. We have our global holdout group that we compare against, and that is constantly refreshed on a periodical basis to make sure that we're not bringing any sort of bias into the testing. So every quarter we would refresh this global holdout group, and essentially our methodology, we call it an improved intent to treat methodology that we follow internally, and what we were looking at in 2020 was really to prove the value of overall retargeting. So we run a number of tests consecutive to each other to make sure that we are constantly having this positive uplift, to make sure that we know, okay, retargeting is really bringing up a positive uplift. Firstly, we wanted to prove that there is an uplift in revenue, but this is really, really tricky because given also the genre, so the percentage of payers in social customers is very small. So if you take that into consideration, that we have between, let's say, 1% to 3% of the users who are payers, you want to retarget those users and you want to focus on the incremental revenue from them. We were seeing some indication for positive uplift, but it wasn't statistically significant. Sorry, that's the word I was looking for. So we shifted the focus towards DAU and other engagement metrics.
Oh, okay, I understand. That's indeed, I think definitely it's the right approach. We're also seeing a lot of partners similar to the social casino that are focusing both, I would say, on stickiness and retention versus ROI that you mentioned. And maybe moving into the last questions, to take it in terms of a little bit about the inventory and, taking into consideration the iOS 14.5 changes that rolled out. Are you seeing, in terms of even your growth goals, any special focus are you going to focus on Android versus iOS, or specific placements? Any specific change also on checking incrementality different for geos that are leaned more on Android, etc.?
Yeah, so iOS 14 is definitely a pain point for us and for the industry, especially for retargeting. I wouldn't say it was really part of a set strategy in terms of the preparation that, okay, now we're going to move half of the budget from iOS to Android, or let's have a massive last push on iOS or anything like that. But naturally, some of the spend on retargeting shifted towards Android. And also the incrementality, we're still focusing on that, but since incrementality is not something that you can constantly follow, what we do at the moment is to have a periodical check-in, at least once a quarter, and to make sure that we're still hitting the numbers that we were expecting in terms of uplift. On Android, obviously. On iOS, we are still kind of waiting to see what will happen. So the iOS campaigns that we're running are slightly scaled down at the moment, and we are gathering learnings and trying to understand what we will be able to do. We implemented the ATT pop-ups across all the games, so we are already having a better understanding on the opt-in rates on our end. But obviously, we also need quite a significant opt-in rate on the SSPs to be able to retarget our users. But having the iOS campaign still running I find it useful because it helps us identify some issues, and we already found some bottlenecks. One being actually blacklisting users straight after a retargeting happens. because given the strict advanced privacy policies that are in place now, also from the MMPs, if the user comes back and they are inactive for a longer period of time, then we are not sending anymore the events to the DSPs, for example. So having a real-time blacklisting became one of the pain points that we're looking into at the moment, and trying to find ways around and options how to go forward.
Great. So first of all, thank you so much for all of these feedbacks and comments. It is super interesting. Maybe just to wrap up, final question. If you can share with me what was the app as a user? What was the app that managed to retarget you as a user? And if you know why and what influenced you to go back and use the app?
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, I think one of the apps that did a really good job with that was one of the bigger food delivery apps. It wasn't very recently. It was more at the beginning of the pandemic. They were really targeting me across all the channels. I wasn't a very frequent user or regular user in the past when we were still going to the office. But I think they really increased and stepped up their game when the pandemic and the working from home era started. So they were targeting me across all the platforms and channels, and eventually I gave in, and definitely they are the apps I'm using now several times a week.
Well, I hope that we all go back to our regular work and you won't need to use as much. But great. Thank you so much, Krisztina, for your time and for your insights. And enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Hilit.
That was awesome. Thanks, ladies. We'll see you in the speaker green room below.